Mayo Experience.
That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. That Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2022 Mexico Open DraftKings picks and preview, plus a play the best plays lineup towards the end. And how do you construct a play the best plays lineup when there are no best plays? It'll be a mystery to everyone. Reminder to play in the DraftKings Listeners League. Link is down in the description. 2,500 spots. It's over half full already. So get your spot now. I thought there'd be decreased demand for a jabroni tournament like this. Not the case. Go get that spot. I mean, money's money. They're still running the same DraftKings tournament. You can still make the same bets at the same odds. So if we can find some value here, hopefully we can cash in bigly this week. FantasyNational.com/Mayo to get 20% off all of the stats, all of the tools, the lineup generator, the simulator, the ownership projections, all that fun. I'll be back noon on Wednesday with Tambo live in the studio, taking your questions live on Mayo Media Network. So sub to the network, smash the like to the episode, and down in the description, give me your favorite play below $7,000 this week. New to the show, from the Lines US, John Haslbauer at PGA Tout on Twitter. That's a big Twitter handle to live up to. Like, did you know what you were getting into when you took the Twitter handle?
Absolutely not. No, I guess I did it for attention at first, and I got a lot of attention that I did not want at the time. And I've been talking a lot of people off of the fact that I'm not actually a tout, and everything that I do is free and free access, and with the intent of helping people make their own decisions. But yes, I've definitely gotten a reputation as an actual tout, which I'm trying to shake off. So hopefully on this platform, I can get that message clear.
Well, I mean, I want you to not seem like an actual tout on this show, because actual touts don't give out winning picks. They give out losing picks. I guess maybe it does work the other way, because I'm not an actual tout, but I give out losing picks. Maybe that is what touts do, is give out losing picks. Maybe I'm a tout. I don't know how all of this works, but yeah, free stuff is what we're going for. Hopefully we can get some winning picks. I think there's two critical questions this week, and we'll jump into the course in a second, because that's question number two. Question number one, at $11,300, now that Daniel Berger has withdrawn from this field, A, what is Jon Rahm's ownership going to be? And B, what should his ownership be?
Well over 30% for sure. I think regardless of what format you're playing, and he's going to be pushing 30, and in the high stakes, he might even get to 50. As you said, the decision this week really comes down to, are you going to play Rahm or not? And if you're going to play him, you basically have to put him in all your lineups or none of them. So that's really the decision you make at 11,300. That's not actually that much of a premium compared to the rest of this board. Pretty easy to fit him into lineups. So I think that's why he's going to be so popular. I'm crazy enough to have talked myself into enough jabronis at the 6K level that I actually think I can comfortably, like quote unquote, comfortably play Jon Rahm lineup. So I'm going to be playing him.
Well, I think I am too, and it's not like I won't play some of the other guys, because you can play them in conjunction with one another. And I don't know if you need to go 100% Rahm. You could go 75% Rahm and then allocate 25% of your lineups elsewhere. And I do think that you're right about that. Somewhere around 30 to 40%, even in like the smallest level GPPs is probably what you're looking at for Jon Rahm, which is, you kind of hit on it, like $11,300 for Rahm against this field is actually kind of cheap, because he should probably be $14,000 based on what the odds are telling us, the strength of this field. So it'd be one thing if he was that price. Could you fade him and you would actually have real difficulty constructing your lineups? You don't this way. Like, a fade on Jon Rahm this week is just hey, I think that he's here for no good reason. He's going to play 2 rounds and get out of Dodge and move on with the rest of his life. If not, I mean, you could pay $10,400 for Tony Finau. Sure. I mean, I like Tony Finau this week. I have a bet on Tony Finau to win this tournament. However, it's sort of a case against, Jon Rahm is not. It's one thing to do it in DraftKings. I think it's another thing to do it in the betting market. Like, when you look at these types of fields over in Europe that Rahm plays in, he wins these at a 33% clip. Now, overall, he wins 1 of every 10 tournaments he plays throughout the course of his career between Europe and America. But this style of tournament is going to be the weakest that we see all year on the PGA Tour. It resembles a bad DP World Tour field.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want a case against Rahm to fade him, I mean, it's not that different from the Amex setup where he was the prohibitive favorite there. I think probably 6 or 8 to 1 And he didn't really sniff contention. He was just outside the top 10, never really was in it the whole week. And that was a birdie fest. And he was quoted as saying on a hot mic, it's a goddamn birdie fest. And that's not what suits his game best. He needs an all-around test like we saw at the US Open that's going to favor long hitters and strong tee to green game and not just purely a putting contest. So I think that's what we're getting here. You lose a little bit of your edge if you're John Rahm. Coming into a place here where whoever hits the most birdie putts might just win this event. So from a betting perspective, it's easy for me to fade him, but from a DFS lineup construction standpoint, he doesn't have to bring his best stuff to finish top 5. So if we can feel good about some of the cheaper prices on players here, I don't mind, starting my lineup there.
And that's sort of you kind of hit on it, where in the betting market, yeah, you come third. Obviously, you don't win. That leaves the door open for someone else. In DraftKings, it's really just him competing with these top guys, because you're not going to construct a lineup where you have a $50,000 salary cap and use $30,000 of the money. So it's not really Rahm versus the field in this circumstance when you're making these selections. It's Rahm versus Finau, Rahm versus Answer, Rahm versus Na, Rahm versus Reed, Rahm versus Woodland, really. And it's not even really that, because you can play both those guys if you really wanted to. So even if he comes fourth, it's probably not going to kill you. He's probably still going to be in the optimal lineup.
Yeah. And, the other thing is, too, like you mentioned, is it a tune-up? Like, I don't think this is a tune-up. He has to go very far out of his way to come all the way down to Mexico with the Wells Fargo next week across the other side of the U.S. So I don't think this is a tune-up. I think he's here because he understands he hasn't won in 10 months. And right now, there's only a few months left in the tour season. He's not qualified for the Century Tournament of Champions. So he's got to find opportunities to win a tournament. And this is obviously a slam dunk opportunity for him to win against this field. So I think he's definitely motivated to win. He's trying to figure out why he's not hitting more putts and winning more tournaments. And I expect him to have full focus at this event.
So let's talk about the course a little bit. You did up a really nice piece at the Lines US, and I read through it, I skimmed through it, and you came to a lot of the same conclusions that I was going to. So I didn't even bother writing it up this week. I think you nailed this one. But here's the thing. What if we're wrong about this? Because it does seem a lot like a setup for the Puerto Rico Open. It's a longer course. If you miss the fairway, it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. 2 of the par 5s are pretty lengthy. And when you look at the Puerto Rico Open, I was discussing this with Feinberg on Monday's show, that you do see a lot of the longer hitters, even with weak short games, end up prevailing at that course. Whereas you do not see that at Corrales so much, because that caters a little bit more to the shorter hitters with better accuracy. It's not daunting to them. They can still manage around. Not to say that they're not going to have ample opportunity to score at this course, the shorter hitters, but it does seem like the lean towards driving distance is going to be pretty massive. How confident are you in that? Because we can say, looking on paper, that that's going to be the case, and then we can watch on Thursday and be like, oh, yeah, that wasn't right at all.
Yeah, I mean, how confident can you be going into the first time I've ever seen a professional tournament and a brand new course? With that said, I mean, I definitely think the 2 clear comps to this course on the PGA Tour, as you said, are the Puerto Rico Open and the Corrales. And I definitely lean more to Puerto Rico Open. With Corrales, the interesting thing about that, it's really long, one of the longer courses on tour, but all of its length is really from the par 5s, which are over 600 yards, which actually levels the playing field for driving distance if everybody's getting there in 3. So that's why we've seen guys like Ramey and Damon and Graham McDowell have won there, who don't have it, and Bryce Garnett too. Like, these guys don't have distance, but they've still gotten away with it there. At the Puerto Rico Open, it's really been bombers. I mean, I didn't really know anything about Ryan Brehm before he won. I looked it up. He's a top 10 in driving distance. Same with Finau and Hovland and Johnny Vegas are always up there. It's that same sort of bomber type that has success there. And just looking at the holes here, if you have distance, you're going to generate a lot of scoring opportunities. There's not a lot of danger outside of the fairway. And it seems pretty hard to miss these fairways. So it's going to be a second shot course. The longer hitters are going to have easier opportunities to score. The greens are big and pretty generous. So I don't really think around the green game is that important here. And you don't have to be an elite putter to putt well on Paspalum. So I think Puerto Rico is definitely the best comp for this week.
Yeah, Ryan Brehm, Brennan Grace were the past 2 winners in Puerto Rico. Hovland, Martin Trainer, who's in this field, and all he can do is bomb the ball. Then you had duh points for, I don't know, reasons. He ended up winning. He ended up being Bryson that year, who came runner-up, and then Finau won in 2016. So I do think that's probably the best spot that we're looking at. Fortunately, a lot of the same guys that play in that tournament are going to be playing in this tournament this week because they don't get into many real tournaments. They might as well play in this one. Unfortunately, you have to go up against John Rahm at this point. So let's go to the $10,000 range. We talked about Rahm a little bit. If it's not going to be Rahm, who would it be? Because I think it's very clearly Finau for me, but that's based sort of on a distance thing, and his driving has been kind of wonky over the last little bit, only 24th in this field, but if you compare him to like good fields, he's way lower than that. The problem is just a lot of the players in this field just aren't all that good. The ball striking has been fine, the putting has been atrocious, and you kind of said with Paspalum that it's soft, it can equalize putting a little bit. Do you think that's something to the benefit of Finau right now?
Yeah, I think any change of greens will be welcome to Tony Finau right now. So why not take a chance on Paspalum? You can go down the list of guys who've won on Paspalum. Aaron Wise is a good example of a guy who's been god awful, but always competes at Mayakoba. So there's something about these team no putt ball strikers who they get to Paspalum and they find a way to hit putts. It's a grainless surface, so it's not as difficult to read. You kind of just get your line and hit it. And usually on these resort style courses, they're not super undulated. So it's a pretty flat surface and pretty easy for the players and their caddies to read putts. So I think that you can go with ball strikers here and hope that they catch a hot putter. I'm with you on Tony Finau. I also bet him and started my card there. And I believe I'm also with you on Gary Woodland, who seems to be the most popular play here. To me, he's the second best player in this field, and it's definitely a misprice on DraftKings to have him all the way down in the 9K range. So he's going to be a popular pick here. Somebody you probably are going to have to find a way to pivot off of if you're also playing John Rahm.
Yeah, how many Rahm Woodland lineups are there going to be this week?
It's easy to fit it in, honestly. That's kind of going back to the point of John Rahm could have been closer to 12K, and then you have to make a decision. But when he's in low 11Ks, you can find a way to fit both those guys in, and you have to suck it up and play some low 7K, ugly 6K names. But there's a way to do it.
I was just trying to sort on Fantasy National by Paspalum putting splits, and you're not really going to find any is the problem, because you're not going to have strokes game putting from any of these alt event. You're not going to have shot link this week. There's no shot link at Mayakoba. Therefore, there's no way to measure this stuff. So is there a way to go about this, or just kind of look at results and be like, oh yeah, that's obviously how they got to the top of the leaderboard. They putted well that week, and that's it.
I mean, for the most part, yeah. The only measured event that had Paspalum was the PGA Championship last year at Kiowa. This is not Kiowa conditions, so I don't really want to look at that either. I think Justin Rose gained like 10 strokes that week for whatever it's worth. So I tried looking at that in the past just to see, like, is there any correlation? Not really. I think if you're a great putter, you're going to hit a lot of putts. And if you're a weak putter, you're going to miss less putts. So I didn't really factor strokes game putting or short game at all in my models this week. It's kind of a leap of faith and hope that they hit a lot of putts on what should be a fairly easy surface to read.
Yeah, well, I have a show coming out in a little bit that I did with Brendan DeGula about trying to do predictive putting, and I've created a new model based on that just for putting and see if we can kind of parse that through just a little bit. And I'm looking at the long term of this right now because that's how I would weight it in. And once that show is released in about 10 days' time, you can have a better chance out there of trying to figure this out as well. But Patrick Reed is one that continues to pop up in terms of predictive putting from the proper ranges. He kind of spiked at Bermuda, came in second during the swing seasons. The last time that he was actually any good was then. He was okay at the Masters, I suppose. But we have these other three guys. I mean, Answer's going to garner ownership despite the fact that he's been god-awful, withdrew from the Heritage with an injury. We still don't even know really what this injury is all about and how serious it is. Then you have Na and Reed. Or Na and Reed, like, I don't think that Reed is going to be owned at all at $10,000. It's severely overpriced for who he is, even in this field. If we're thinking about contrarian pivot plays on DraftKings, you have Na and Reed sitting there. Do you feel comfortable with those guys? Because it feels like if you're not going to go 100% Reed, you just kind of like smatter the board here and just try to get away from some chalk.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable about it at all, to be honest. I think you're being contrarian for the sake of being contrarian at that point. It is a long course, and these are two of the shorter hitters in the field. Patrick Reed just continues to lose more distance, which is crazy to see. People might point to him winning the WGC Mexico and having a win in Mexico. I feel like this course couldn't be any more opposite to both Chapultepec and Mayakoba. So I don't really put any stock into performance at the other Mexico tournaments. And I'm pretty concerned with what I've seen from him. He's a short game specialist. I want to play Reed on more difficult courses where you value scrambling for pars. I don't really see this week. And with Kevin Na, he shines on accuracy courses where he's going to gain on the field with his accuracy. off the tee, and that doesn't really matter here. So he's really going to be losing strokes off the tee to the field, sacrificing distance. I'm going to fade both of them. If I was going to lean to one of the two, I'd definitely lean towards Kevin Na. He just seems to pop up randomly with win equity every now and then. So I could see that as a pivot. Patrick Reed, I could see him being 1 or 2% owned this week in DFS at 10K, and it still wouldn't sway me to play him.
I mean, he's playing a little bit better at the moment. He was 35th at the Masters. He was 26th at the Players. He did gain 9 strokes putting at the Players Championship, and he was just kind of across the board at the Masters. Did gain off the tee, weirdly enough, at the Masters, which is always surprising to see for someone like Patrick Reed. Then it was like a really bad run for him through everything. But he has had a tendency to play longer courses better than shorter courses for, I don't know, reasons, because he's Patrick Reed, and he makes no sense. I don't want to sit here and try to talk people into Patrick Reed. I'm just very curious, because I know that he is going to be 1 or 2%, and sometimes that's all it takes in a field like this. Oh, Patrick Reed had a hot putting week? Perfect. And like you talk about, Kevin Na pops up with win equity out of nowhere. I mean, this version of Patrick Reed doesn't seem to, but I mean, he did win the Farmers as, early as last year.
Yeah, I mean, in Reed's defense, he actually had a couple really good rounds at the Century Tournament of Champions. They were sort of alternating with horrible rounds. Maybe if he gets a different driver than that PXG driver, I'll think about it. But I'm just concerned with the distance right now and trying to focus in on the guys who are going to set themselves up to score on some of these longer holes.
Well, we're recording this pretty early right now, so looking at the Fantasy National projected ownership of all the players above, for Gary Woodland and above, let's go that way. Rahm and Woodland stick out like a sore thumb as by far the most owned. Then it's Finau, then it's Na. Weirdly, Answer and Reed. I actually thought Answer would be very highly used. I was wrong on that. At least right now, people are not gravitating towards Answer. So you might be able to get Answer, Na, and Reed all in the single digits. I think I would go Na, Answer, Reed in that order with them, but Answer becomes somewhat interesting if people really aren't going there.
Yeah, did not think that he was going to be a leverage play going back to Mexico, but he has 2 WDs due to injury before and after the Masters at 2 courses that suited him perfectly. I know you and Jeff talked about this too, but Valero is his home course, his home event. And RBC Heritage is what should have been his first career PGA Tour victory, one that suits his game very well, almost beating Webb Simpson in 2020. So, he's like actually battling some sort of illness or injury if he's going to withdraw from both of those events. Now he goes down to his home country, but it's not a course that really suits him that well. And he's not the longest hitter, and he does rely on sort of that rollout distance off the tee, and he's not going to get rollout on Paspalum. So I do worry about that. I know he has impeccable history at Mayakoba, but again, I don't really see that as being very translatable here. All of that to be said, he's the 25th world golf ranked player in this field, which makes him the second best by OWGR in the field. So if you're just going on pedigree and he's going to be 2%, I could certainly understand the play.
My issue would be that he's only here due to obligation, that he is injured. He's not so injured that it's a big deal. Like, he's not going to hurt himself anymore. He just knows it's an injury that he can't play to the fullest of his capabilities, but that's okay because he's working as an ambassador, being, it'd be like having the Canadian Open in 2005 and Mike Weir not playing in the tournament. It'd be like, well, this is kind of weird. This is like our guy, and he's not playing in our national tournament on the PGA Tour. So there could be a little bit of that at play here. I'm not going to play him because I am terrified that he actually is hurt, and he's just there to show up, shake some hands, play 18 holes, and be like, yeah, I'm kind of hurt, or just go miss the cut. So it would be Na for me. So Rahm, Finau, Na would be the 3, but I don't even know if I'm going to get there. I might just go Rahm and Finau. Do you think Rahm and Finau together is a bit more contrarian? I mean, it'll be a bit more contrarian than Rahm and Woodland, but how popular do you think Rahm and Finau together is going to be?
Probably less so. I think that's definitely a better way to go. That's going to force you to play a couple 6K guys if you go that route. Maybe we find out that this is a Liberty National Comp course, and then you've cracked the code.
That would be nice if it was Liberty. Now, hey, we could use Patrick Reed at that point.
Yeah,
too.
they're reading there too. Yeah,
jam all of them in, and we'd be good. So Woodland's in the 9s. I'm playing Woodland. I know he's going to be like 30% owned. Maybe you know what? He's probably a better fade than Rahm because he's not John Rahm. Therefore, that's good enough. That's winning the argument right now. Although the numbers are telling me to play Gary Woodland at the moment. You have Munoz, your guy, Tringali, Kirk, Wise, who's Anderkirst, Champ, Brendan Todd, Russell Knox, Streelman, Matt Jones. That's the rest of the 9K range. There's no real difference outside, at least in my mind. I think there's a clear line between Woodland and Munoz in terms of like talent and skill that I'm looking for. And then from Munoz all the way down to Chad Ramey at $7,900. Like these are all basically the same guy. You might as well just play whichever one is the less owned.
Yeah, Munoz is my boy. I'm always repping Flex Seal over here for my guy. Always in a first round leader perspective because he just really struggles to put 4 rounds together. And I'm dreading playing him in first round leader this week because he's going to be like 40-1, shortest he's ever been. But, so is the case with this field. I'm a little worried about him. I see his ownership creeping up, and he just withdrew from one of the most recent tournaments and hasn't actually played in over a month. So he's a guy who's always sort of hanging around. He hasn't finished top 20, I think, in his last like 4 or 5 or 6 starts. So the strokes gain numbers are good. The 4 complete rounds haven't quite been there. If he's going to be high ownership, there's a couple other pivot guys I like in this range. Matt Jones is definitely the one I like the most. I think I'll be most overweight on Matt Jones when it comes to DFS. He's at a pretty reasonable projection. I think around like 12% owned right now. A guy who, if the forecast is actually going to be as windy as it looks like it may be, I'm seeing like 10 to 15 mile an hour winds. That plays into Matt Jones's strengths. That's really what he credited his Honda Classic win to, being able to flight his ball through the wind. I really like him on wide open fairways. He's not somebody that's going to think about strategic angles. He's just going to step up to the tee box and smack it out there. And he shot 30 under at the Century Tournament of Champions, basically doing that. So he has the distance to score here. He can get a hot putter. I think 9K is a very fair value on him. And he's actually where I started my betting card this week too.
Yeah, if we're going to play, how windy do we think that it's going to get? Because it's not directly on the coast like we see with some of these other courses, at least resort courses. It's more like Mayakoba in that way, in a sense, where it's close to the ocean, but it's not on the ocean. So it might not get as swirly, as windy as maybe it is at some of the other courses.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not right on the coast, so it's not going to be this constant coastal wind, but people close to the event are saying that the wind is one of the better defenses of this course, which is always a recipe for a birdie fest. When they're saying that, I mean, just look at what happened at Kapalua. If the winds are down, there was nothing stopping people from scoring. So I think that's something we have to monitor. If it's 10 to 15 throughout, then that's notable enough. If it's anything less than that, I probably won't be factoring it into my player pool, but definitely a guy who I'm going to be playing. And if the wind does pick up, I want more shares of Matt Jones.
Do we want more shares of Russell Knox in that same range if we are playing this wind angle? Because I know that Matt Jones has far more distance than Russell Knox does, although he has far more accuracy off the tee, and maybe he can play it that way, very comfortable in the wind. A Scotsman, he's going to be pretty good in the wind, and he lives in Jacksonville where it's constantly windy. So that could play a factor that way. Now I'm sounding like Feinberg trying to hype up Russell Knox. But if that's the angle that you want to take, is there any interest in playing the angle of, hey, I'm going to play Streelman, Knox, Todd? I mean, Munoz would fit into that. Kevin Na would fit into that. Like, if everyone is playing bombers, can I make myself unique by doing a Ben Raza skill stack and take some of these more good iron, maybe they can catch a hot putter, but very accurate players?
Absolutely. I think, as you said at the top of the show, we don't actually know how this course is going to play. We can only guess from the information we know on a scorecard. So if people are going to be chalked but just for the sheer fact that they have distance, we've seen so many times people compete being average off the tee with distance. It just makes your long irons work a little bit harder. But Russell Knox is still second in this field strokes gained ball striking over the last 36 rounds. So especially if it gets a little windy, you're going to need to be able to be hitting your approach shot square off the middle of the club face. And that's what he does best. So I wouldn't fade Russell Knox just because he's sacrificing a little bit of distance. He's still going to be in the fairway on all of these holes on these wide open fairways. So at close to 5% owned, I think that's a really interesting pivot play.
I think that I am still going to go with Aaron Wise, despite being Andrew Kurtz, because at least on DraftKings, he doesn't need to win in order to prevail. But somewhat coastal, windy track, that sounds like the Aaron Wise recipe.
Yeah, he's figured it out on Pass Palm too, a longer hitter. I was actually between him and Gary Woodland to start my betting card, and I saw the Enderkurst news, so that actually made it a very easy decision. I was having a tough time with that one, so I appreciate that guiding me in a different direction.
Yeah, so I have Woodland and Finau on the card because I do think that they're in a class above based on what I'm looking at for this course. And I was able to grab it right before Daniel Berger withdrew. Good timing on my part. I had no idea that was coming. It'd be so... would this be a better DraftKings week if Berger was in the field, do you think?
Yes, because I think it would keep Rahm's ownership in check. And now we're in this sort of weird... what do we do with John Rahm, and everything kind of funnels back to that. I was prepared to play Berger. I was actually about to bet him too. And I was pivoting back to the same guys you did after he withdrew, but it was a good setup for Berger because you could have seen people fading him for the distance angle of it. He's outside the top 100 in distance in this field. So that could have been somewhat of an edge, and he's obviously the best approach player in this field, and approach is going to be important. Now he's out of here. It sort of creates this giant gap from Rahm to the next guy in terms of pricing. So I wish he was in the field. I thought he would have contended here, but I guess that back isn't 100% still.
Do you have any interest in the Todd father? Because his putter has been rolling. Not that that's a huge surprise to anyone, but the irons have started to come along as well. He was 8th at Valero, 26th at Heritage. Obviously, those courses, I mean, Valero's a pretty long course. He was still 8th there. 26th at Heritage, has had some success at the Puerto Rico Open in the past as well. And he's won in Mayakoba on these types of greens. And he won in Bermuda, another place. I mean, obviously, those have Bermuda greens in Bermuda, but that's a shorter, but still the same like type of course that we're looking at here in terms of location, how the wind is going to influence it, types of field. No one is using Todd is the only reason I bring this up. He's sort of the Patrick Reed of the 9K level. I think I'd feel more comfortable with him than Reed based on, because at least the opportunity cost of taking Reed means you're not having Woodland or not having Finau. With Todd, it means I don't get to have Aaron Wise or Matt Jones potentially. And I think in some lineups I can live with that.
Yeah, for me, like, we want bombers, and we can pivot off of that to average off the tee, like Russell Knox. That's fine. When we get to Brendan Todd, it's such an extreme lack of distance that I worry how many like 3-woods he's hitting into par 4s on this course. So I'm a little nervous about that. At 9K, Brendan Todd. This is a gross field, but I'm not ready to get that gross. I struggle to play Brendan Todd when he's in the 7Ks. So he'll be a pass for me. I'm not somebody who plays enough volume of lineups to be making these super leveraged decisions. So for my player pool, I don't have to dip into somebody because he's just 1% owned. I think that the projected ownership is telling the story here that most people are staying away.
Well, maybe that's more of a discussion I'll have with Tambo, who I'm pretty sure is playing 150 lineups, and whether he's going to end up doing that and whether I should be able to figure that out, because I'll probably play 50 this week, and I can see Brendan Todd making that mix. I know that Champ is going to be pretty highly owned. I'll probably stay away from Champ. He is sort of the clear example of someone people are using because they heard that driving distance matters this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Cameron Champ is also interesting with the patterns of how he pops. Like, he'll get a top 10 and then win the week after and then miss like 6 straight cuts again. I don't understand it, but that top 10 at the Masters is eerily similar to what he was doing right before he won the 3M Open, where he sucked. And then he all of a sudden, for some reason, figured out the ball striking, parlayed that into a win, and then fell off the face of the earth again. So people might be sort of trying to read the tea leaves on him this week and take advantage of that. That ownership is a little scary for me, and I could very easily see Cameron Champ ejecting at any given moment. So I don't think I'll be going there, but I do understand the play.
Oh, I completely understand it as well, but looking at the ownership right now, it's Woodland is going to be by far the highest out of the 9s. Then it's going to be Champ. So that's going to be tougher. That's a hard pass for me. I played him at the Masters, and he was like 1% owned. That's a good time to play Cameron Champ. When he's 18% owned in this field, I just don't want to. I don't want to have to play that much Cameron Champ because I don't want that many dead lineups by Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, that is always in the cards if you're playing Cameron Champ. He is boom or bust. Maybe more of an outright consideration than DFS if the ownership is going to be up there.
I think that makes more sense as an outright play, and he was bet down. I remember when Paul made the graphics on Monday morning, the only change that we had to make pre-Daniel Berger withdrawal was Cameron Champ's odds had been bet down. So he's going to be a very popular bet this week from that mid to long range that is getting some steam and the odds are dropping, and that's going to directly translate over onto DraftKings. And almost like, Reed, Finau, they're probably better bets than they are DraftKings plays, potentially. We'll see about that, though. The golf season's rolling along, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official betting operator of the PGA Tour, has a gimme for new customers. Place any golf bet of at least $5 and get $100 in free bets, no matter what. You can bet a golfer to win, bet single round matchups, and so much more. As long as you throw down $5, you'll get $100 in free bets. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state yet, you can still get in on the PGA Tour action. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Golf Contests. Draft your lineup of 6 golfers and compete for over $1 million in prizes each week. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DOP. Place a golf bet of at least $5 and get $100 in free bets, no matter the outcome. That's promo code DOP at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting operator of the PGA Tour. 21 plus restrictions apply. See show notes for details. $8,000 range. You got Tigala up here, but the ownership is gravitating towards Aaron Rye, CT Pan, Lonto, and Hal, but nothing seems to be prohibited here. Like, none of these guys are going to be so owned because everyone is stacking at the top $9,000 and above that I don't think that someone is so owned down here that you can't play them, or someone is so little owned that you have to play them. Like, everyone in this range is just pretty flat, outside of Taylor Moore, who legitimately no one is playing.
Yeah, for sure. I think the natural lineup construction this week is top heavy with Rahm and one of those other guys at 9K up, which actually gets this range to be a bit overlooked. If you want to be contrarian, you can build a lineup from just these 8K guys.
Oh, God.
And just go down the middle. That's not how I'll be doing. I actually don't really see myself playing much of any of these guys. I mean, Charles Howell was a guy who popped in the models that I was running, but he's Charles Howell, so like I don't really want to play him. Sahith Theegala, I think, makes sense here. He's the guy you want to play on forgiving fairways because he kind of sprays it around a little bit. Sanderson Farms, I think, is actually sneaky, one of the better comps here because you can bomb it and spray it around a bit. And that was really where he had his first chance at winning a tournament earlier in this season. So Theegala makes sense. But other than that, like Carlos Ortiz is going to be popular maybe for the Mexican angle. But
what do we do with Carlos Ortiz? Because even by the numbers, when I run them, he still looks pretty good if I use a long sample size. But he's missed his past 4 cuts. He had a good round at Heritage. It was the first good round he had in 3 months.
Yeah, he had, I believe, a shoulder injury right before Mayakoba. And it was like kind of rumor, like, was he going to play because he wants to represent Mexico, but he was going to come in injured. And then he finished second and he almost won it. But then he hasn't looked himself since then. So it's kind of hard to figure where his health is at right now. It looks like he might be a little banged up and still recovering, similar to Answer. I think there's some obligations of why he's here. He's sponsored by Vedanta, actually. And apparently he has some experience on this course, albeit before they renovated it and made it into a par 71 with new bunkers. So, I mean, the ownership, again, it's not as high as I would have expected for a Mexican player of his quality. And the price is not horrible. So as far as pivots go, I could definitely see him on a short list of guys I would consider in the 8K range.
It's funny, when you bring up this 8K range, can you construct lineups from here? I just ran CC of Jackson of where they play the Sanderson Farms. Past 12 rounds per average strokes gained total of players in this field. The best players, it's Champ by far, who does have a win there, so that actually makes a lot of sense. Seth Reeves, Peter Uline, Carlos Ortiz, Charles Howell, CT Pan, Theegala, Tringali, Hardy, Aaron Wise, Kevin Streelman, JT Poston. That's not inspiring stuff.
It's not, but those are all guys that I think are popping up in this ugly field as guys that, suit this course as well. When I saw this course, my first reaction was, this is a great Sergio Garcia course, and he's probably an ambassador for PGA Latino, and he'll be here. He's not here. I wish he was. He would have been a great play. But he's a guy who's also obviously won at Sanderson Farms. So I think that's maybe if you're looking beyond just these alternate field comp courses, that's one that has a little more data for you to pull some trends off of.
I was surprised to see Davis Riley not jumping out as by far the highest owned guy of the 8,000. Maybe it's a little bubble I'm in, but everyone just seems to love Davis Riley so much. Can you see yourself going to him at 8,500?
Yeah, he's a guy who, like you said, he doesn't really jump out. I don't feel like I have to play him or I have to fade him. And so that could be an ownership decision. If he's lower than a Charles Howell, he would seem to have a lot more upside than Charles Howell. And he's a good all-around player. I think he was a very popular play at the Zurich last week, partnered up with Will Zalatoris. Did fine, nothing crazy, but not enough reason for me to hard fade him. I think he's a promising young talent, interesting guy who sort of like doesn't fall into any like rookie class. I would say like who do you pair Davis Riley's come up with? I feel like he missed the Hovland Morikawa wave, and then he missed this new like the Gala Mito Pereira wave too.
I feel like he's firmly with Zalatoris. It's just he kind of struggled a little bit, and it took him a bit longer to become. And he's still not the name Zalatoris is right now with the success that Zalatoris has had in major championships and just overall. Because it felt like Scheffler, Zalatoris, and Davis Riley all took they took that Corn Ferry path to get to the PGA Tour rather than just being, hey, Morikawa and Hovland, hey, we're pros now, and then just they earn their card immediately.
Yeah. That Zalatoris rookie season is weird because he was like essentially the only rookie eligible to win Rookie of the Year with the COVID asterisk season. So I think that's why I kind of overlooked Davis Riley. But again, great player and a sensible price this week.
Any others in the $8,000 range you want to go over? I like Mark Hubbard. I always like him at these sorts of courses where, if making a ton of birdies and 15-foot putts is kind of a big deal, that's something he can do.
Yeah, just going off of strokes gained, I think he's second in this field over the last 50 rounds in total strokes gained. So hard to believe, but that is the crop of talent that we're working with this week. So at 8K, a huge value. 10% Mark Hubbard gets me a little nervous, but again, like we're sort of grasping at straws in terms of like how comfortable we can be with the players in this field. I would probably favor Chad Ramey right below him. $100 cheaper and slightly less ownership, who just won on a comp course and has great irons. But I think both are good plays.
Okay, let's go into the sevens. The Smother Man is up there. I'm most definitely playing the Smother Man. He seems like a pretty good value for someone who does both things that we want well. He drives it very far, and he's very good with his irons. $7,800, good enough. I'll play him over Ramey in this circumstance. Patrick Rogers, I'm never really on the Patrick Rogers train, but this does seem like a very good course for him. And the first bet I made this week was Wyndham Clark at $7,600. Comes in with some pretty good form. Has played well in Puerto Rico in the past, even at Corrales. I mean, he doesn't play those tournaments often because he usually doesn't have to, but he's played them twice. He's never finished worse than T22 between the two courses, has a ton of distance, obviously, and he makes a ton of putts. It's his irons that usually get him into trouble, but he's been a lot better in that area. Even last week, he was T10 in the team event. I know that's not really all that telling, but it's better than him coming in dead last at the same time.
Yeah. And, ownership is a little bit up. He's one of those Cameron Champ profiles where he's just going to bomb it and on a short list of names that people are going to go to on a very long track. A guy who's very good at off the tee and short game and sort of comes and goes on approach. But he makes a lot of sense here. I don't think his ownership is insane. I do like Patrick Rogers here right next to him at the same price. I feel like sometimes you try to get a little cute with Patrick Rogers and find the time that he's finally going to break through and get his first win. But he has good success in the island coastal courses. He's a long hitter. I think he's 12th in this field in driving distance, not an accurate player. That's not going to hurt you here. And he can roll in a lot of putts. He has a lot of top 10s on courses over 7,400 yards over the course of his career. So he's been knocking on the door. He just can't seem to get a win, but at 7,600, you're not asking him to win. You're just asking for maybe a top 20 this week, which I think he's capable of.
After that, these are all essentially the same guy with slightly different skill sets. Griot is somewhat interesting if he wasn't playing so horribly. The one that really sticks out to me is either Peter Uihlein at 7,000, who I'll be playing, and Kurt Kitayama, who I bet is $7,100. I'm just going to be in on those guys.
Yeah, Uihlein is essentially a cheaper Wyndham Clark, I would say at this point, with a little less pedigree, but bomber. So if you want a little like price and ownership discount on someone who hits it far, you can go with Uihlein. I like Bramlett here. I think he's one of the most popular guys in the 7K range, but another bomber with a good approach. can't buy a putt, but if we're gonna try to like run with that pass Paulum narrative that anybody can hit a putt, then that should actually suit his game pretty well. And he has a few strong recent finishes on these pass Paulum courses at Corrales in Puerto Rico.
So Smotherman, Bramlett, Svensson, Tyler Duncan. Where's the other one? That's it. Those are the guys popping double digits right now in terms of projected ownership. Obviously, that can flip. Wyndham Clark is getting closer to that. Patrick Rogers is getting closer to that at the same time. So it doesn't seem like anyone is like. It's weird that Tyler Duncan is the one who is going to be the highest owned of the sevens. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, especially with Russell Knox going kind of underlooked. Like Tyler Duncan is just a poor man's Russell Knox. I know he's got a price discount, but they tend to play well on the same courses. So maybe that's a stack that you consider, or more likely you just fade a 14% Tyler Duncan.
Nick Hardy, I always find, is really interesting because when you go and look at his performances, it's usually a missed cut. But whenever he plays well, the ball striking is off the charts. I don't know how to come to terms with this. Like, is he a good ball striker? Or is it just something he captures for 4 rounds sometimes once every 3 months, and that's the end of him? And usually in those circumstances, he butts himself out of it anyway. But it hasn't been good for him. He did have a T28 in Puerto Rico, surrounded by 2 missed cuts on one side and 3 on another, even a 60. Like, basically since the calendar flipped, he's been horrible. But he was good through the swing season.
He was, just to start 2021. He was on a tear with his approach, and it seemed like he was going to be one of these newcomer guys that were going to stick and stay. And then he's fallen off a bit, especially with approach, which is concerning. Another guy, when you look at numbers this volatile and streaky, maybe more of a betting card consideration for like a high finish or an outright at really long odds. If you're playing a ton of GPP lineups, he can pop with the ball striking, like you said. So maybe that's, at less than 1% ownership, very appealing for the upside, especially compared to guys like Hunt and Wallace and Lee Hodges and Vaughn Taylor all around him. Like, he's got far more upside than all those guys. So just as a GPP play, I think he's interesting.
Once again, everyone out there, leave your favorite $6,000 play down in the description. Smash a like and sub to the channel while you're at it, and click on the Listeners League. I'd hate if you didn't do that. You should do that. I like a lot of these guys. I really like Shank at $6,900. I'll just start there. I think that's a good play.
You know what I found interesting about Shank? This course has 55 bunkers, which they added like double them. Shank is dead last in Sand State's game.
Okay, that's bad news.
Does that change your opinion on it?
No. I like him in these crappy events. He played really well in Puerto Rico. I believe that was. Yeah, he's made all 3 of his cuts in Puerto Rico. Nothing worse than T27. He was 7th at Corrales. Never missed a cut there. I just think, and he's a really good putter. And especially from inside 15 feet where you rack up those birdie opportunities. He's been bad against PGA fields, but every time that you kind of take him out of that mix and put him against these guys, he's a lot better.
Yeah, definitely. The easier the scoring and the easier the conditions, the better Shank plays. And he really pops on the easy birdie fests. And although he like somehow found himself in contention at the Farmers, he, for the most part, like he quickly realized he was Adam Shank on the weekend and ejected. But if it's an easy scoring course and it's just fairways and greens, he's a good putter and he can actually take advantage of that. So very low ownership and has the upside.
If this was this time last year, Vincent Whaley would be 50% owned, I think. Now no one wants him.
Yeah, a bit of an island specialist, I believe, right? I haven't looked too much into Vince Whaley, but I know he had a streak where he made every cut and finished top 40 for like 3 months straight. Haven't heard too much of him lately, as you said, and I think that's how he's down in the 6K range. But if he's a resort specialist, Whaley on the coast, I feel like that has a nice ring to it. Maybe he is a sneaky play.
I'm just trying to look through the ownership here. Projections show Robert Garrigus as the highest owned player of the sixes at 5%. So take whoever you want.
Big Greg Norman guy.
I mean, yeah, he certainly is a big Greg Norman guy at this point. I didn't even bother looking into all the Greg Norman angles. I mean, you could use me. I played at one of Greg Norman's courses in Morocco. So, I got my Greg Norman experiences. But
yeah, there's a nice Muni in Pompano Beach. That's a Greg Norman design on his website that I frequented. So I too am a Greg Norman specialist.
Here are the guys, and I think you just want to mix and match from down in this range. It's Shank, Callum Tarrant, Dylan Woo. Two guys I bet, by the way, Tarrant and Woo. Tarrant is 175 to 1, Dylan Woo. And someone actually commented to me, it's like, I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Dylan, like the other way that you say Dylan, not Dylan. And I just wish I could reach through the internet and smack that asshole in the face. Can't believe it. Imagine being that guy.
Can you explain to me what the difference is between Dylan Wu and Brandon Wu?
No,
because
no,
I don't know why one is.
I'm looking at a spreadsheet. That's all I know. And Dylan Wu has played well at these types of courses in the past, so I'm in. And he's much cheaper.
He's cheaper, yeah. I guess if they're both Woos, you take the cheaper one. That's the rule of thumb.
So those two, not playing Garrigus, so I'll be out on that one. Where are the other losers that I was going to play? I was looking at Seth Reeves. That guy absolutely hammers the ball.
I learned who Seth Reeves was this week. And
big lefty. He's a big lefty.
Okay. That's interesting. I don't think there's any ready lefty splits here, but you want bombers, and he's a cheap one. So that's interesting. How do you feel about the big ticket, Bryce Garnett?
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to play him. I'll be playing Martin Trainer, someone who I've bet at 750 to 1.
He can putt. He can't do anything else, but it's a putting contest,
you know what?
Perhaps.
He can bomb it. He gets it out there. He gets it out
Okay.
there. I mean, he won Puerto Rico. He just came 5th at Corrales, and the guy can putt. Why not?
Okay. Yeah, why not?
Sold.
I know you're going to France soon. How do you feel about Paul Barjon?
Paul Barjon? Sure. I was more thinking, I was going to go with my guy Sky and just go with Patrick Flavin, because apparently he's good. I just don't know anything about him, but Sky swears by this guy. So I will play him in honor of Skylar Hoke, host of DP World Tour Picks and Bets. That show is out this week, by the way. It might be a better field over in Europe this week. I don't know, but he's $6,500. He's been like pretty good on the Corn Ferry Tour.
Yeah, Monday qualifier legend. He seems to win all these Monday Qs. That's how he got in this week. And he's made like every cut this year that he's Monday qualified for. So he could be a sneaky one.
Top 10 in driving distance in this field, if we just kind of go through it past 36 rounds. Champ, Bramlett, Mullenix, Wyndham Clark, Uline. So I'm playing Clark and Uline. Haggy is in that mix. Rahm, Seth Reeves, Kevin Tway. Curtis Thompson is $6,700. And then you have Gary Woodland. Good Lord, Grayson Murray's in this field? Oh, no.
Probably also in cahoots with Greg Norman, if I had to guess. I read between the lines.
I would even guess that Greg Norman doesn't want that kind of smoke.
I mean, I'm assuming he doesn't have his tour card, so he must have gotten invited here on some sort of technicality.
Yeah, I mean, he is a former PGA Tour winner. He won an alt event. I think he won the Barracuda. He won the Barracuda, or the one by Wiley, that the one in Kentucky. The Barbasol. He may have won that one. Either way, like Woodland is number 11. Barjon is number 13. Kitayama is 14. Trainer is 15. Callum Tarrant is 16. Rogers is 17. Smotherman is 20. Like, you can see the clear line that I want to go to. I do think that being good matters more than driving distance, but once you get below $8,500, like, no one is good, so you might as well go with driving distance. That's my strategy here.
Yeah, I actually kind of see this playing similar to Caves Valley, where if you have a lot of distance, you could separate yourself on the amount of birdie opportunities you can get. I think Shane Lowry was pretty outspoken about that, like not being fair when he was playing there, because he just like could not reach the greens in the way that Bryson DeChambeau could. Obviously, Patrick Cantlay won that because he gained like a dozen strokes putting, but that was really a bomber's course, and it was a soft course with little rollout. So I agree with the bombers angle. I think that's going to be a popular angle, but it makes sense that if you hit it farther and you have shorter irons in, you should generate more birdie opportunities on this course.
I think it's time to play the best plays, and I think it's pretty obvious that the play the best plays lineup starts with Rahm and Woodland. What do we do now? We have $7,200 for 4 players.
I feel like Bramlett is there. He was a guy who was like top 10 in my model. Super long, good approach player. We don't know if he's going to hit putts, but we have reason to believe that he'll hit a higher percentage of putts on Paspalum, and we need to find somebody that we're comfortable with in the low 7s to 6K range. And the ownership is sort of reflecting that. He's about 10% owned. So if we're not concerned about leverage, He seems to be one of the better plays this week.
After that, it gets pretty dicey. I mean, we could go with Tyler Duncan, who everyone else is going with. I don't necessarily understand why he's a best play, but Paul, you use Tyler Duncan every week. Doesn't he like pop in whatever stats that you run? Like the stats that we show on the board is the model that Paul uses. Like Paul is just kind of doing the graphics as we go through it, and it will give you a rank on Fantasy National of those players, of those 8 stats that you see on a graphic board. And doesn't Tyler Duncan always do really well in those, Paul?
He wasn't popping anything this week.
Oh, okay. So no.
I don't know why everyone loves him. I only made a few boards because this tournament's kind of
Crappy?
jabroni. CT Pan is a guy you didn't talk about that was like popping on the model for this tournament for reasons. I don't really know why.
I'll bet like par 4 Sky Tee to green 6th. Yeah, there's why. Par 4 12th. I mean, should we be playing? The Panimal. The Panamaniacs unite here in Mexico. John, should we be playing the Panimal?
Why not? Let's get weird, right? I mean, we're not going to feel good about any 6-man lineup we put together. So why not spice it up with the Panimal?
I suppose that could most definitely be the case. Let's try to pick someone in the 6Ks to figure out this lineup, because we have Rahm, Woodland, Bramlett. Who is it in the $6,000 range that you would feel the most comfortable with? Like, is it Martin Trainer? Is it anyone else? Like, is it going to be one of these bombers, I would assume? Is it Paul Bergeron, who you brought up?
I think comfortable is a very relative word this week, but I think it is Paul Bergeron, just because he's got a skill set of being very long, and he also has pretty good like approach numbers for the most part. And the ownership is there. He's over 5%, so I think people are on him a little bit. And he had a top 10 at the Amex, which was another weak field that actually did favor the longer hitters that week. So he has some sort of ceiling at this price range.
Long dong Paul Bergeron. There we go.
And the narrative fits your trip to Paris. So I feel like this has legs.
Patrick Rogers and Wyndham Clark now completely fit into that lineup. So it's Rahm, Woodland, Bramlett, Bergeron, Patrick Rogers, and Wyndham Clark. That is the best plays lineup with $0 remaining, which is always key to these sorts of lineups. 3 guys that we didn't mention, now that I kind of scroll back through what we've done. Tringali, Pat Perez, and Nate Lashley, who I think I don't have a super lot of interest in. And Chris Kirk is another one we can throw on this list, the 4 forgotten guys that we just didn't talk about. Do you have interest in any of those? Because, I mean, Tringali and Chris Kirk are going to be super highly owned. So is Lashley.
Yeah, my first impression was I thought that Chris Kirk could actually be an overlooked leverage guy this week, and he is decidedly not. I think he's like the 3rd or 4th most popular pick anyway. I think the pricing is a little off there. He probably should be maybe where Patrick Reed is at 10K against this field. But yeah, good all-around player. He's not going to do anything crazy with distance, which is why I thought he might have gotten overlooked. But the tee to green game is definitely there, and he's a good player. And Cameron Tringali, we joke about his outright price, but he probably does have he's probably a top 3 player in this field just off of recent form alone, which, says a lot about the field itself. But at 10%, he doesn't really kill you that much in DFS. He sort of plays himself out of winning tournaments on Sunday for the entirety of his career. But, he's in the mix usually. So I don't mind that play.
All right. That will do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. Playing the Listeners League. John, can you direct everyone towards your work? Because I think you've been doing your course preview stuff is amazing. And I wish it came out earlier so I could read it, then regurgitate it for my preview show. But I do my preview show before it comes out. So do that a day earlier, please.
Well, I appreciate it, Pat, and thank you very much for having me on. It's my pleasure to be here. I am at PGA Tout on Twitter. So you can find me for all of my tweets there. And for my work, my article previews go out before each week. Basically, as soon as the last hole is finished of the week prior, I release my tournament preview for the following week at that point. So that is on thelines.com. You can find me there. And then I also do a weekly values article with a lot of the names that we discussed here today. That's on playpicks.com. And then my final card is always up on the lines. That's me. And thank you again for having me, Pat. It's been a pleasure.
You know, I used to release my article as soon as the last shot went in, and then I got lazy. But you know what? That's okay.
It's, you know, it's much easier on weeks where I don't have anybody in the mix, which unfortunately has been pretty often the last couple months.
I feel like that's been all of us, depending on who you are. It's been tough hitting winners this year, man. When Scheffler keeps winning and no one's betting Scheffler outside of like the first time, what are you gonna do?
It's been a lot of runaways with the Team Cantlay and Xander and Scheffler sort of taking every tournament by the horns. So hopefully we have a sweat in store this week. It's a hard one to predict, but you know, gotta feel optimistic anyway.
All right. Well, thank you so much at PGA Tout on Twitter. You can find John Haslbauer. You can follow me at the PME. Play in the Listeners League. Pay for Fantasy National, but get 20% off at fantasynational.com/Mayo. All right. Thank you all for watching. Cheat Sheet will be up on DKNation.com, and I'll be back noon Eastern time live with Tyler Tambolini Wednesday on Mayo Media Network. So make sure you're sub. Okay? I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!